Bonjour.
Bonjour, monsieur. Bonjour, madame.
Bonjour. So today we have a very special guest.
Yes.
A few years ago, Candace and I booked a vacation for our anniversary to Paris.
Yeah.
And I was looking for things to do.
Yeah, you were.
And I'm being proactive, the actual proactive husband that I'm usually not. And so, I found the Black Paris tours.
Mm-hmm.
And that just automatically piqued something in my brain. I'm like, Black Paris? I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah, I was like, what are we doing? And he was like, oh, yeah, I found this tour. Because he knows that whenever we go to different places, we really like to kind of immerse ourselves in the culture and to find things that are local to do. So I was like, okay, cool.
And then I looked and I'm like, Paris has a Black history. And so we booked the tour.
Yeah.
We did the run of the mill tours the day prior, and then we got on the Black History tour and we met Miss Ricki Stevenson, aka Madame.
Madame.
Thank you.
And it was just eye opening just to see your history in other places.
Yeah.
And
Tell me one thing that you remember most.
I remember we went to the African restaurant.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was pretty good. And one thing I do remember is the Africans that were there were friendly towards us. They were warm and welcoming.
Yeah.
And they asked questions. They were inquisitive about us.
Yeah. And I actually remember a couple things for the tour, which is my memory is like the worst if you can ask anybody. But I remember, I was like, Black in Paris. I didn't really make the connection whenever we booked the tour, but just being there and seeing all of the statues of prominent African Americans and hearing the stories of the Africans as well. And, I saw the Arc de Triomphe and I'm like, everywhere. And I was like, I never knew the name of them. So that was definitely something that really stood out to me. But, more than anything, I was just amazed at the knowledge that Miss Ricki Stevenson has.
Madame.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so since you started at the Arc de Triomphe, if you don't mind, I'm just going to put this in really quickly.
Yes, ma'am.
That the Arc de Triomphe was ordered constructed by Napoleon Bonaparte in 1806. Why? Napoleon Bonaparte had gotten beaten up by Toussaint Louverture and the Africans that had been enslaved in Haiti. And so when he came back to Paris, he was embarrassed. I have been beaten up, run out of town by the most successful guerrilla warfare to have ever been waged in the world.
Wow.
So he was like, what am I going to do to make myself feel better? So he ordered the construction of this huge, everybody knows about the Arc de Triomphe. I wish I had a picture of it right now. But he ordered that his Arc de Triomphe be constructed. And he ordered it to be constructed to look like an elephant. So you all know how high it is.
Yes, very high. Yes, ma'am.
This massive arch in the very middle, in the very center of the Champs-Élysées, the most beautiful boulevard in the world.
Yeah. I agree.
He wanted it to be a gigantic elephant. So I'm like, why did he want it to be an elephant? So it took me a few years of research. But lo and behold, Hannibal was from a middle-class family. His father had been a lawyer. So he's from a middle-class family on the island of Corsica. Corsica is off the southern coast of France, between France and Italy. At one time in its history, Corsica had been controlled by the Carthaginians of Africa.
Wow.
And y'all know the greatest Carthaginian warrior to ever live was a man named Hannibal Barca. And in 218 BC, Hannibal had crossed from Africa, came up through North Africa, crossed through Spain, came into France, crossed the Alps, going into Rome to conquer the Romans.
Yeah.
So Napoleon learned about Hannibal Barca, when he was 16 years old when he was admitted to the military academy in Paris, and he wanted to be as great a warrior as was Hannibal. Imagine this little French guy, and he was little.
I remember that part.
He was short and insecure. Sorry, anybody who's short, but he was insecure. And so he wanted to be as great a warrior as was Hannibal. Hannibal had crossed the Alps on 37 war elephants, African elephants.
Wow.
So Napoleon is trying to make himself feel better. He said, well, I'm going to build an ark, but I'm going to, I'm a floss, I'm a flex, and I'm going to pretend that I'm as good a warrior as was Hannibal. Wow. So he wanted his elephant to be 164 feet tall. It was going to have ears, horns, a trunk, a tail, and facing towards Africa. His architects were like, that's kind of tacky, and it's going to be hard to clean. And he was like, but I want an elephant. They were like, oh, we don't get it. And then, finally, he died before the ark could be completed.
Oh, wow.
And his architect said, glad he's gone. And they turned it into the ark, that classical, almost Greek Roman arch that we see today. Wow. Two Africans who impacted French history.
Wow.
Toussaint Louverture, who forced him, who kicked him out of Haiti, made him sell. Okay, don't let me go too far.
No, go for it, Mr.
Okay, made Napoleon sell Louisiana territory.
Yep.
That territory that went from the Canadian border down to the Gulf of Mexico, from the Rocky Mountains, Colorado, to the Mississippi River. That whole 1/3 of the United States after Napoleon lost to the Haitians in the Haitian Revolt of 1792, he was forced to sell Louisiana territory in 1803. And we all learned 1803, Louisiana territory was sold to the United States, and Thomas Jefferson bought it, and blah, blah, blah. But why a black man?
Wow. Wow. You guys are in for such a treat today. As you guys can already see, Miss Ricki Stevenson is a wealth and full of knowledge. So guys, I just want to back up and give an intro. So Rodney,
So look, Miss Stevenson, aka Madame. She is an award-winning author.
Yes.
An international journalist.
Yes.
A historian.
Yes.
Author. Reporter.
Yes.
And griot.
And
I like the griot part best.
Griot.
I like that. That griot comes from Africa, and because Africa was so vast, one of the largest continents, and before books and manuscripts and all of that, the Africans put great respect, great pride, great store in telling our stories, oral tradition. And that was all started by the griot.
Wow. I'm so glad that you guys I'm really glad that you were able to tell everyone what that was, because I know I saw it and I was like, what does this mean with Ricki Stevenson? I was like, what is this word? It's just these things that we learn about not only ourselves, but also about our culture. So I really appreciate, what you have done, not only in your career and what you're still doing. So I do want to ask you a question for those of us that, don't know you or haven't had the story or want to hear the story again, which would be me and Rodney. So can you tell us a little bit about what was your childhood like growing up?
Well, I'm an interesting mix. My father was from Oklahoma. We're from Boley, Tishomingo, Ardmore, and a town called Greenwood, Oklahoma, where in 1921, there was the so-called Greenwood attack. Greenwood, Oklahoma, sometimes they call it Tulsa, but Tulsa was the white town across the highway. Greenwood was the black town where there was something like between, let's say, 28,000 African Americans lived in Greenwood. I'm getting ahead of myself. They had 800 businesses. They had hotels, hospitals. They had their own taxi service. They had a bus service. These Black people, they had pharmacy. They had two movie theaters. They had a stage theater. Wow. These folks were rolling. They had 2 private airports.
Wow.
Wow.
These Black folks, many of them had gone to war in France during World War I. Some of the men, they were already proud. I'll just quickly see if I can tell this story in a couple of sentences. My father's family, the Stevenson family, I have great uncles who would tell us, we are Africans who were brought from the continent of Africa to have been enslaved. Just this week, we commemorated the Day of Remembrance for what they call victims of enslavement, and the fact that 15 million Africans were kidnapped from the continent over 400 years. So we were among those, but the Stevensons were, well, they eventually got that name. They would run and escape into the swamps of Florida.
Wow.
Became known as the Seminole.
Mm-hmm.
That just means the African Indians. It's just like saying the Maroons or the Cimarrons. These were the people who had freed themselves.
Wow.
And so I had great uncles who would talk about, baby girl, we refused to be enslaved. We escaped. We went into the Florida swamps, connected with the Native Americans, taught them how to do stuff, and then helped them survive the Trail of Tears. In 1838, the Trail of Tears was a time when the American government told the Native Americans, well, if you go over to this territory, it's called Oklahoma, it's a dust bowl. But if you go over there, we won't bother you. If you don't bother us, we won't bother you because you all have been wearing us out. So the Africans and the Indians made that trek on the Trail of Tears, went to Oklahoma, and then what happened? They found oil.
Things changed.
How can we get that back from them? How can we work it so we take back what we've given them? So here's this town, Greenwood, Oklahoma, in 1921. There was a young Black man. The whites were so jealous that the Blacks had this prosperous town that there was a young Black man who was shining shoes across the highway in Tulsa. He supposedly either looked at or whistled at or bumped up against a white woman elevator operator. They were going to lynch him. The Black men who had been to France during World War I in 1917-18, they went home, got their guns, surrounded the jail, and said, there will be no lynching here tonight.
Wow.
We did not go to France to fight for freedom, democracy, and justice to come back and tolerate this. Okay, so I told that long story. It was more than 3 sentences, but that's who I knew I was from the time I was a child. My mother's family is from Arkansas, from Little Rock. I'll shorten it up and just say I had 2 uncles that fought in World War I from Arkansas. They had, I won't go into all of it, but I have a cousin. My great-grandfather was a Garvey man, meaning a follower of Marcus Garvey on my mother's side. And they didn't tolerate too much. My mother grew up. Oh, and I have a cousin who was a member of the Little Rock Nine. She was one of the Little Rock Nine. Her grandfather was the one who had fought in World War I. So you see these kind of things kind of linked together. So I came out of that family. My mother had been a dancer. She grew up, for the most part, in Denver, Colorado. She learned how to dance at the Denver YMCA or YWCA, I guess, and went out into the world went out into the Depression. There was a huge depression then, 1920s, 30s, 1929, and went out into the world as a professional dancer. My father had been a member. I won't go. My father had kind of migrated himself. There was a CCC camps. During the Depression, they had camps for young men so that they could make money and not just be hobos and riding the rails. So Daddy had been a member of the CCCs, and then he became a singer. And he sang gospel. So they both had common interests. And then Daddy went into the Navy. Mom stopped dancing. She had been a professional dancer. She had danced with Louis Armstrong's band at one point.
Wow.
She had all of these experiences. She was a petite little cute woman. And she danced with Dory Miller, who was really famous Black American military hero. I mean, he picked her to dance with him. They were I think they were at the Dunbar Hotel in Los Angeles, and he picked her to dance with him. So she would talk about these things. Then when I was 3, well, then the kids come along. And when I was 3, my mother took me to see Josephine Baker perform.
Oh my gosh.
In Los Angeles. And I'm sitting in this chair looking at my shoes, because you got new shoes on and you got all your best stuff. And I'm like, who are all these people around us? This is not TV. What's up here? And then this woman came out with her rainbow tribe of 12 children, came out on stage, and I was hooked. I was like, I love her. I love her. And those kids, and they were dancing, and it was so elegant, and people were just in love with this woman. I saw her again when I was 10, but I remember that from when I was 3 more than I remember the others. Oh, wow. My mother was an avid reader, having had a grandfather who was a Garvey man. She was, and then, I mean, just the family history. And she took me to meet James Baldwin, who spoke on Stanford campus when I was 11. We didn't march with Dr. King, but we marched with the civil rights movement. My parents ultimately, Daddy was in the Navy, but they ultimately settled down in a town that was called East Palo Alto, California. It was Red Line town. And let me just tell you short, it eventually we renamed it to Nairobi.
Wow.
I grew up in Wakanda. Where my teacher said, baby girl, you are bilingual. I was like, what? They taught us you speak Ebonics and you speak English. And you must learn how to speak both of them correctly. So then when you go out, you can code switch. Mm-hmm. Imagine having a Black teacher teach me, you are bilingual. I'm like, hey. Yeah, I got this. Or teachers who could have taught, who chose not to teach at Stanford or teach at the white schools because they wanted to teach these Black kids in this very dynamic Black community.
Wow.
Yeah. So I met Stokely Carmichael. Muhammad Ali came to my school. Angela Davis came to my school. It was like, it was a magnet. What's his name? Oh, shoot, I can't. Dick Gregory came to the opening of our first grocery store.
Wow.
That is awesome. That is
It was. So it was a protected place, but it was a place where you must do. We were taught you must go out in the world representing. Don't act a fool. You can code switch, have fun, do what you want to do. But unfortunately, we know that crack came into the community. And we, as high school kids, we started protesting because we knew the police were bringing crack into our community.
Wow.
So the police said, we will kill you little colored kids. Stop. So unfortunately, yeah, when kids from my high school, Ravenswood High School, started going to universities and colleges and getting scholarships in great numbers, they were like, we got to shut this down.
Wow. It's sadly, it's always like that. There's a school in particular in Charlotte that was my brother actually went to the school. It was a magnet school first. and they turned it to a neighborhood school, and it just kind of went downhill from there. And a lot of the historic Black people in Charlotte went there.
Yeah. I remember they tried to bus, they had a program called Sneak Out or something, and they wanted us to go to the white schools. And I went to, they were like, oh, we want you to go over across take a bus to one of these white schools. I was like, these are some dummies over here. Okay, I mean, we had, my biology teacher was Mrs. Wing, whose parents had been interned.
Wow.
Among the Japanese who were interned. She knew what time it was, meaning they had been put into concentration camps during World War II.
Wow.
So Miss Wing knew what time it was. I had my physiology teacher, my algebra. I mean, these were Black folks who could have taught anywhere and chose instead to teach at my high school.
Wow.
It was about pride, community, and if you did anything that was wrong, Miss Johnson gonna get you. You will be
on
handled before you got home. And then when you got home, your parents, Miss Johnson called me. What? But we were protected, loved. It was Wakanda.
Wow.
What an amazing place to grow up.
Yeah. So Madame, you went to Stanford University.
Well, I went to undergraduate school in Denver, Colorado. Whoa, what an experience. That's why I always tell young people, I had an opportunity to go to one of the Ivy League schools, but honestly, I was kind of afraid. Even though I had all this education, I was afraid of going east because I was like, I don't know, maybe they're so bright and, geniuses. Yeah. So instead, I went to Denver, where my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother had lived, my great-grandmothers, they were gone by then. They had become ancestors. But I had an aunt who was there, and I wanted to experience Denver. That was Black Happy Days. That was like Wakanda Part 2.
Oh, wow.
Denver, Colorado.
Wow.
Has a long, proud history. And so Denver was, that was so much fun. I called it the Black Happy Days.
Wow.
So every Sunday you went to the NAACP. Well, you went to Mass, and then you went to the NAACP meeting, and then you went to somebody's house to play bidwist. And then it was, to learn, for me, it was learn how to play bidwist. And it was this thing where, the guys would ask you a week in advance for a date, and then you'd roll 6-8 deep cars going to the parties Saturday nights and stuff.
Yeah.
It was a different reality, but more than anything, it was that centering of who you are as a Black person and what is expected from you.
Mm.
So you didn't just graduate and leave. You had to graduate and do what you gonna do.
Wow.
I went to undergraduate school there, and was so. I'm still, my best friends now today are those that I met in Denver. Then I went to graduate school at Stanford. Now this was great. This was great because I got in. Well, I won't tell all of it. Okay. Because you have students, I'm going to tell you. Yeah. I always wanted to be a politician. I thought I was going to be an ambassador at one point. That was my dreams, were to become a newscaster, to one day live in Paris, and to become an ambassador to France, I thought. And so I was going to do things, political things that were going to move me. So I was political in my school, in my undergraduate school, and then I was selected to be an intern to a Republican congressman in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
He was a great Republican. He was a Rockefeller Republican.
Wow.
Different type.
Different mindset.
Mentality.
Yeah, with good sense. And he was from California, Pete McCloskey. And he was great. And so we were both kind of learning about Washington, the racism of Washington. And when he saw what was happening, he was like, "Woo!" He would do, he would kind of give me special perks to make up for the silliness.
Yeah,
that we were both experiencing in Washington. And so anyway, I met this brother, and he was a Senate intern, and we both wound up going to grad school at Stanford. Well, he decided he'd go, so I said, well, I better go too. So, our advisor was a man named St. Clair Drake, Dr. St. Clair Drake. And he was the first to institute a Department of African American Studies.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
At Stanford. Wow. And we had militated to get him. Dr. Drake his family was from the West Indies, but he had been in Chicago. He and Richard Wright were best buds. You see, I can't go on, but it's like I've had these things that have happened in my life that have pushed me towards Paris. So Dr. Drake saw something in me, and he would push me to do things that normally, he sent me to a Garvey conference in Jamaica.
Wow.
Well, because I knew who he was academically, but I didn't know that people knew him around the world. I didn't know that he had gone to the 1959 Pan-Africanist Congress in France. That he knew Amy César and Diop and all these other people. And so, Mrs. Garvey was, of course, gone by then, had become an ancestor. But Mrs. Garvey found out that he was my advisor, and she says, well, come stay with me.
Wow.
So talk about being in the right place. It all begins with your dreams, though. I tell young people, dream. And whatever it is that you dream, you can then step out and make it happen. I had a high school counselor who was like, well, how come you're taking AP classes? And how come you're doing this? And your parents don't have any money. They really didn't. And I went home. He says, you're not going to go to college. You have to have a lot of money to go to college. And then I told my mother, and the next day my mother went to school with me.
Ooh.
And she you know what happened.
Yep.
Don't you ever, before she sent me out of the room, she said, somebody in our family might die and leave us with money. Don't you ever tell a student that money would keep them from doing something.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So I tell young people, don't let anything hold you back from your dream. Have a dream and then just step out being the best person you can. Prepare yourself and something's going to happen. Someone could be standing right next to you and say, I want to give you the money to do, or I'm going to open the door for you to do. I'm going to give you the opportunity to do. And it's not about money.
That's it.
It's about who you are.
Right. Yep.
Wow.
That was, man.
Yeah. Man. I hope that really resonates with someone. Because I know, like me growing up, I was always a kid, like, I want to try this. And, I had that family, I had my grandparents, I had my parents that would encourage me, my uncles, my aunts, I had all these people surrounding me. And I tell you, I would have some crazy stuff that I wanted to do sometimes, but I was always encouraged. And that's one thing that I've been able to take with me throughout my life, is that having that dream, having that vision, and being able to fulfill it. So, that spoke wonders.
Yeah, it did.
That really resonated with me.
So don't let anybody stop you from what you want to do. And then I'll take it another step further. I belong to Science of Mind. It's not Scientology. This is Science of Mind. And we believe that anything, those dreams and the daydreams that you have, that is Father, Mother, God speaking, Father, Mother, God, Spirit speaking to you, telling you that you can do, not only could do, can do, but that you should do, that you were brought here to do. So if you don't do, then you haven't paid attention.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. So I do have a question for you about your career. So how did you kind of get started in the world of journalism, being able to work for the United Nations? Like how did all of that kind of come about for you?
And who gave you that push? Who gave you that push?
My mother was a newsie. I'd wake up when I was a little girl when they bought this house, so we wouldn't have to travel around the country anymore, going from base to base. My mother would get up in the morning. Daddy would be gone very often. He was on the ship away. And Mom would be watching the NBC News or the Today Show. And I can remember seeing in 1960, there was a Black American man who was being interviewed on the Today Show. His name was Eugene Jacques Bullard. And Bullard had fought in France during World War I. He was a pilot.
Wow.
He was the first Black fighter, African American fighter pilot. Not for the Americans, but for the French.
Wow.
Wow.
He was called the Black Swallow of Death. He was he was a Steph Curry of piloting. He would just do these loops and he would do all of this stuff and just dive bomb the Germans, and the Germans would be like, uh-oh,
It's him again.
It's him again.
Here it comes. And he did it with, how we do stuff, with style and class.
Style and grace.
Style and grace. And so he became a pilot, awarded top awards from the French government during World War I. And then he became a spy with Josephine Baker during World War II. And then he was injured. And so the French were saying, don't stay here. We want you to, he had married, had 2 daughters. They were like, we don't want you to be killed. Why don't you, wait out the rest of the war, go back to the United States. And he wound up in Harlem. Oh, he also had a nightclub, Eugene Jacques Bullard. He hired Ada Bricktop Smith as his first hostess with the mostest. He hired Langston Hughes as a bus boy.
Wow.
In 1924, he hired Langston Hughes. Anyway, so he was the owner of this nightclub. It was called the Grand Duke. Everybody went to the Grand Duke. And he was being interviewed on the Today Show. Why? Because the best job he could get when he came back to the United States was as an elevator operator in the Rockefeller Center. So here he was interviewed that day in his elevator operator uniform, the cap, with all of these French war medals across his chest, because President Charles de Gaulle had come to New York looking for him to give him some more medals.
Wow.
And they had a big dinner for him in the Rainbow Room and for other American war heroes the night before. And here he was on television. And I'm like, what? I remember telling him, I said, I'm going to go work in New York. I'm going to be there and I'm going to tell our stories. And my mother was like, okay. So I decided I was going to become a journalist when I was about 7, maybe 8.
Wow.
I had decided earlier than that I was going to go to New York, that I was going to go to France at one point. Okay. So how did it develop? I got stories for everything. They tend to be a bit long, but
take your time.
Please take your time, madam.
Okay.
Take your time.
So my mother would make sure every month I got, Ebony Jr. had all these books. I was an avid reader. And so she would harass me about say the words correctly. I would say something, get. And my mother would say, honey, it's not get, it's get. Yeah. I would get teased. How come you talk like that? It's like my mother made me. But I could code switch.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was, there was one point at which I spent a year on campus, on the Fisk campus. Oh, the guy that I met who became a Senate intern, we eventually got married. And he was a professor of African American Studies at Fisk for a year. And so we went to Fisk. My first time, I'm all excited. I'm on a campus of a Black college. And so I met some journalists, some folks there, Reginald Stewart, who worked with the Tennessee Banner, National Banner, I think it was. A woman named Faith Fancher, who became my ace buddy Cuddy. I mean, I met all of these people. There was this woman named Oprah Winfrey, who was a part of our group.
Oh,
and Oprah was,
Oprah.
Just regular Oprah. It's Oprah.
well, she was then, not now, but she was then. She was Oprah. And she was working at a radio station. I can't even remember the name of it. WVOL.
Wow.
But she had been offered a job in television, her first television job there in Nashville. So Reggie was like, well, Oprah, you're getting ready to take that job. Why don't you give your radio job to Ricki? And she was like, okay. And so she said, well, I was like, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. And she said, will you just come to work with me every morning and watch what I do?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And we like the way you write, because I had to do some things. And she said, and so I was with her a couple mornings. The third morning I got there, she left me a note. You on your own.
Ooh, wow.
Good luck. I was like, ah! But it was trial by fire. 8 months later, I had been hired to National Black Network in New York.
Wow.
Why? Because I had a worldview, having studied history, our history, Africa, the Caribbean. I knew about liberation organizations. I was doing stories. It's like whoever came to town, when Jesse Jackson came to town, well, it was a historic radio station anyway, but there was a Saturday talk show. And ultimately, I was the one that got to do the talk show.
Wow.
So when Jesse would come to town, he'd always come to WVOL. What you all doing? Sorry. When Reverend Jackson came to town. I interviewed Althea Gibson.
Wow.
It was like all of these people. When you're in a historic, you're in Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
When you're in a historic place, history comes to you.
Yes, ma'am.
So Mayor Maynard Jackson, I had a chance to interview him. And I'll never forget, in the middle of it was a call-in show. And in the middle of the show, someone called from National Black Network in New York and said, I'd like to speak with Miss Stevenson. And we were taking a commercial break, and the guy, and Mayor Jackson took the phone away. He said, is this you, Vince? He said, yeah, you need to hire her. You need to hire her. I'm like, no, I've only been doing this for a few months, He said, you need to hire her. And he said, call her back when the show over. He didn't say it that way, but I was code switching. He was like, make sure you call her back when the show is over.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't do that. He said, how much money do you make? It was some paltry sum. He said, I just want you to go and try it.
Mm-hmm.
If you work there for just 1 month.
Wow.
He said, he said, I'm talking to you. And I was like, no, I'm afraid. He says, I'll come and check on you.
Wow.
Wow.
Do you know Maynard Jackson came to New York? Not only did he come, the fact that he came, he says, I'm checking on Ricki. They were like, oh, she knows some people.
Everybody was looking around in the office. Oh,
yeah, they were like, oh, she knows. But that was, okay, so that leads to me then, our senior correspondent, Malvin Good, first Black network television. Mal Good had worked for ABC television in the 60s. And Mal was then he had retired from ABC, but he kind of dabbled. He was our UN correspondent for National Black Network. And Mal, we spent some time together. He would talk and he'd say, well, how come you know all this stuff about these liberation movements? And I said, well, I went to school with the guys, you know, who were part of the liberation movements. And my advisor was Dr. St. Clair Drake. He's like, what? You know, so he's like, well, I want you to follow me around and come. He said, there are days I might not be able to get in. He lived in New Jersey. He said, I want you to come and work with me. And he says, how old are you? And I told him, he said, don't you ever tell anybody how old you are. You're too young to be here. You're too young to know what you know. He said, you just come every day. You come prepared. You come with your tape recorder, your equipment. You come with your questions. You walk in, you ask, you leave. These men are not going to take you seriously.
Wow.
Yep. So that was one of the most significant pieces of information I got. He said, don't date them. Sorry. You got to tell the whole truth. And so a year, you know, it's like a year later, they were like calling National Black Network saying, we'd like to speak to that woman reporter. We'd like to do an interview with her. So you have to prepare yourself, and then you have to have people, you have to follow the guidance of people who know what they're doing.
Wow.
That's good advice. That's a nugget, y'all.
That is a complete nugget.
It's a nugget.
So that's how I got my foot in the door. I'm so proud. I got to work. I came back to California. I worked at KCBS radio. Oh, that was a chilling experience. Having been in a community with National Black Network, where I got to work with Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis. I was producer on their Ruby Dee, Ossie Davis Story Hour. I did a show called Black Issues in the Black Press. I was one of the producers on that. You know, everybody, this is like Nashville again. Everybody was coming to NBN to interview. You know, so got to interview James Baldwin again.
Man.
And so I said, I have your book. And he was like, oh, wow. He invited me to walk. I was leaving after when the show ended. He says, where are you going? I said, well, I live up 104th and Central Park West. He says, I'm going up to Harlem. Let's walk.
Wow.
I was like, okay.
I know he's just a wealth of knowledge. That man was just so amazing.
You know, and so he would dip in and out of Paris. And as we walked, people are like, Jimmy, hey, Jimmy. And this woman ran out of we were on Amsterdam Avenue, and a woman ran out of a pharmacy. And she's, Jimmy. Oh, she was Diane Carroll.
Wow.
And I'm like, you know, scared to death. And he's like, get over here. What are you, don't back up, come on. And so he said, you can be in this conversation too. So I was just like, but the only thing that I wanted to ask her, I said, how do you maintain your beauty? You're so radiant. And she says, well, I don't eat sugar, flour, rice, potatoes. She said, you must take care of your body. I was like, yes, ma'am. Yeah, we do have to take care of our bodies.
Yes, ma'am. We do.
But but ultimately, that was my foot in the door. That was such a wonderful, it was like getting a PhD in broadcasting. And I remember one time, someone told me, well, you know, they asked me, well, were you in communications? I said, no, I was in history. And they said, well, that must have been really good because we can teach you how to turn on a microphone. We can teach you how to do a countdown. We can teach you but we can't teach you what questions to ask.
Right.
And I had cameramen. I worked my first job in television. I was working for a Black-owned television station in San Jose. I'm telling you, God has blessed me.
Yeah.
This brilliant Black man, John Douglas, in the 80s, decided that he would create this television station called Well, it was KSTS TV, but we did business news for the first time. Business news was done from California, Silicon Valley, to the East Coast. And we did a 3-hour daily show highlighting all the people who we now know. Like I interviewed Steve Wozniak.
Wow.
And Jimmy Trabig, who started Tandem Computers, and Nolan Bushnell, and all of these people. And it was funny. They'd be like, 2 years ago, I was living out the back of my car. And today, I'm a gazillionaire. And what was really funny is I'd walk in and they would be like, she's black, but she got a cameraman.
Exactly.
And my cameraman was so cool, Tom Bull from Los Angeles. He would do stuff. I have to tell this. This is also offside. But Tom and I worked so well together. Tom was like, we gonna rock their world. And so Tom would slip the microphone down my shirt, pull it out, hook me up, set up the lights, do all of this. I'm talking to the person, looking them in the eye. I'm not even looking at Tom. And then he'd tap me on the shoulder when it was time to start. Wow. And the people would be like, oh, hold him up. Wait, how'd you guys do that? And so then they would talk to me. So that's when I learned you must rely on the people you work with.
Right.
Wow. You have to have a good relationship. And we go places. I'm interviewing George Schultz, and Tom would say, he would tell the other reporters or the other cameramen, watch what she does. He was like, I'm so proud of you.
Wow.
This is awesome.
Wow. This has definitely made my day. We have to ask you about Paris. And about the Black Paris tour. Like, what was that transition? And,
how did you get to Paris full time?
Well, I was full time. Okay, I was a travel reporter. I got hired for the job that I prayed for this job. I want to be a travel reporter. I want to get paid, go around the world, eat at the most fabulous restaurants, see this.
Yes.
So I did that for about 6 years. And then in 1997, because of my UN connections, I had an opportunity to interview Mikhail Gorbachev. He was coming to San Francisco.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Did I tell you that story already?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Oh, yeah, that was kind of interesting. Okay, but there's more to that, though. When I got hired in 1990, when I got hired to work for News Travel Network, I was the first Black. I was the first woman to be hired as a reporter. And they were like, now, they had a big meeting with me. Now, you're Black. I was like, yeah. And you're going to be going out into the world, and there's going to be a lot of racism. I was like, okay, I've lived this long. Only racism I ever faced was in the United States.
Wow.
I went to Paris first in 1994 as a travel reporter. I loved it, loved the people. Said, I can do this. I had been, when I was married, I was a trailing wife, and my husband was in Saudi Arabia for a while.
Wow.
And that was great. Because the Saudis were like, hey, here comes some more Black Americans. Yeah. We love you all. You know how to act. When we tell you, don't wear short skirts, don't walk out, don't act a fool, don't be drinking, you all say, you're going to give us a good salary, nice house, nice car. What else you want me to do?
Abide by the rules.
Abide by the rules. Find out what the rules ask of you, and then do that no matter where you go. You can Google all this stuff now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Find out what the rules are. If it means that you will have a much richer experience if you go to France and you say, bonjour, madame, bonjour, monsieur. Some people are like, I'm not doing that. Well, then you're not going, that's like, can I come in? it's like opening the door.
Yeah.
Because they'll say, "Oh, nice people. You were well." They say, "Bien entendu." Oh, I can't remember the name. I can't remember the word right now. But it's like you were well raised, as opposed to how come they don't speak English? Yeah, you're in another country.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How come I can't use my dollars? You're in another country.
Another country.
How come the restaurants closed? You're
in another country.
I mean, it has been hilarious. But in Saudi Arabia, I learned if you follow the rules, you will not. The Mtawa, the religious police, would whip the women, the not black women, the stupid women who went out with short skirts. You don't violate our rules.
Right.
So they would whip their legs. You go home.
Wow.
Yeah. And you don't steal there, they would cut off your hand. So it was intense. But again, you give some black people nice house, nice job, nice car, whole bunch of vacation. We're like, yeah, what else?
Me up.
So I haven't answered the question. Anyway, moving forward, I decided that in 1996, I decided it was time for me to take my daughter and move to Paris because I always wanted to go and thought I would go when I was about 10 or 11. So I was like, ooh, time to go. Yeah. And I left my job and went to Paris for what was to have been a year, 23 years ago.
Wow. Wow.
And arrived, and once more, it was like stepping out on faith. And faith supplied every need I had.
Wow. Wow. That is completely awesome. It's
been fun. It's been fun. But the bottom line is anything you want to do. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
But anything you want to do. And you, young people, our mentees, anything you want to do, you can do it. All you got to do is start here first. Start here.
Wow.
Madame.
We miss you.
So what are some of the differences in living in Paris versus living in the States?
That's a good question.
Ooh. Well, my friends thought I was crazy because I left I have a nice house, and they're like, why would she go? I have an apartment in Paris. But the major differences for me were there's more emphasis put on people than things.
Wow.
I would agree with that.
I'd agree.
Yeah. I don't know if we told you when you took the tour, but it's like in France, you're expected, people respect you, or you're expected to have a nice pair of shoes, a nice watch, dressed simply but elegantly, but not showy. Because remember Marie Antoinette? Yeah, you don't show off because that would get your head. That would take you to the guillotine. Oh, she's showing off, So it's, I love I know this sounds so silly. I love the etiquette, the politeness.
Yes, ma'am.
The children, my African West Indian friends, which they're called aunties. The children, after a while, if you're part of the family, you're auntie. I love that. I love the fact that this is going to be really crazy, that the children don't cry. You know how you see kids fall out on the floor and acting a fool and woo. In America, but the children are taught not to cry. You'll see mothers or fathers, and mothers and fathers with the kids. And the fathers will have the babies on a backpack or have them up here when they're babies. And then, it's expected that the parents take them out, whether the parents are together as a couple or not.
Wow.
the French really emphasized the fact that there are no illegitimate children there. I think they're the country, the developed country that has the highest level of children who are born to parents who are not married. But they don't emphasize that whole thing about illegitimate.
Yeah.
The child, that's the mother, here's the father. The child is going to need both y'all.
That's it.
So you better get along.
That's it.
So, and the child, if you can't provide for the child, no, not just if you can't provide. You provide for your children, and we'll do stuff for you and the children. Mothers are paid to go to prenatal care.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yep. Mothers are paid to get their bodies back together after they have the baby.
Wow.
Each family gets so much money for each child per year. I mean, it's just a very different attitude that doesn't shame people for you have a child, but you must follow the rules. Again, the children, don't have your children acting a fool. You know, like I saw this couple. They were a very patrician-looking, elegant couple, and we were standing at a light, waiting for the light to change. And their child must have had an American mother, or I don't know how it worked, but somebody in that family was American. They're standing there, and the child wants something, and the child didn't get it, so the child fell out on the ground.
Oh, wow.
Started kicking and stuff. The grandparents were like, "Oh, madame," they're apologizing to me. "We're so sorry.
Yeah,
we're so sorry." And then they said, they were like, when the light changed, we walking across the street.
Yeah.
And the little girl, she was like, "Oh, I guess I better get up. This is not working here." Or I'm standing waiting at a light, and a French father is with his young son. He may have been like 4, maybe even younger. And he tells the son, stand next to madame, and don't move. Mm-hmm. He stood there. He looked up at me. I looked down at him. I don't leave him with me. You know? But he was like, all right. Daddy went over. I guess he was dumping a water bottle or something. He came back and he says, "Merci, madame." We crossed the street. Same token. The dogs are taught not to bark or jump up on people.
Now, if we could get that over here, that would be perfect. That would be perfect. Because that's where every time I see a little dog, like they're like heading my way. So,
and I'll never forget, I was walking along the street, but there's other things. Like I'm walking along the street behind an elder. And I don't know if she was, and because of the difference in how crime happens there, elders can be out day and night. Mm-hmm. And so this lady's walking along on a cane. She's walking real slow. And what do we learn as Black Americans? What do we usually do? If you're walking behind someone, you kind of scrape your feet so that they'll know that you're walking behind them. And I kind of scraped my feet. And she turned, I'll do it like this. She turned to me and she's like, "Oh, bonjour, madame." I was like, I love these people. You know, she didn't go, "Get my purse." Oh, let me clutch my purse.
Oh man, that is awesome. That is awesome.
Then another time, there's a lady. She was walking with her little, I call them drag dogs. She's dragging the dog along, and the dog starts barking at me. And I must have been fairly new because the lady starts apologizing to me. "Oh, I'm so sorry. My dog is barking at you." And she tells the dog, "Shame on you. Shame on you. I fed you. You get to sleep in a nice," and the dog is like, "I'm sorry." Dogs are taught. So what does that say? You can train people. The dogs don't, get together. No, they don't jump on you. They don't. It's so pleasant.
Wow.
I know I enjoyed my time when I was
when I was over there. When we were over there, people were just genuinely inquisitive, and they would take time to talk to us and help us. Mm-hmm. But like I stated earlier, we abided by the rules. Right. But Monsieur,
Madame, Monsieur.
Monsieur or Madame.
Okay. Everybody who's listening, I want you to say bonjour, monsieur.
Bonjour, monsieur.
Bonjour, madame.
Bonjour, madame.
Now you've just said hello, monsieur, man, and hello, madame. Okay. So y'all in the South, everybody knows it because I always giggle when people are like, yes, ma'am.
South Carolina.
That's so sweet. I used to take offense. I'm like, you trying to call me old? But I'm like, now I'm like, okay. Sounds like bonjour, madame to me, and it's just, there's a certain thing of polite. Now there's some ignorance. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to rule the French out from ignorance. They got it. But for the most part, there is a certain way that you're supposed to live, certain way you're supposed to eat. How about learning? You have breakfast and you stop. You have lunch and then you stop. You have dinner and then you stop. The kids have lunch in school and it's not served on paper plates and plastic forks. They have silverware and glasses, and they have a full, healthy, no ketchup meal.
No ketchup meal.
And my daughter had a hard time getting used to that. Or when she first started school, God, there's so many stories. You have to excuse me. I had a brain tumor a few years ago. And my doctor tells me that my neural synapses are firing again. And so I'm remembering a lot of stuff.
Yeah, no problem at all.
No problem. We're here to soak everything up.
Okay, so
and then we'll try to bring you back for part 2.
Okay. And so this was a story. It was so funny. My daughter got into a French public school when we first moved there. It happened really quickly. And it was 2 metro stops away from where we live. And so there, the parents take the kids to school. So I would get up in the morning, take her to school, pick her up, I think at lunch or something. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on. And I was worried about my baby. Here's my 11-year-old going to school outside of one of the biggest shopping malls. The school was next to one of the biggest shopping malls in the Paris area. In fact, it was the biggest. Wow. And I'm like, my baby, I'm worried. So I'm going along, and then as I'm taking her, I'm seeing all the little kids with their backpacks. And there was a man, a black man, who it seemed like his job was to tell the children, stop playing, go straight to school. Stop playing. This was before I learned any French. You stop. Straight. Go out that door, straight to school. Straight. Don't play, don't talk. I mean, he didn't tell them they couldn't talk, but he would. Then, after a couple of weeks, come to find out, the man was a homeless man. And I started talking to him. And I said, well, monsieur, what's your name? He said, I'm Monsieur, Mr. Homeless Man. And I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. So eventually I talked to some other parents, and he was essentially living in the shopping mall. Oh. And his unofficial job was to make sure that the children were safe as they transited through the mall, out the back door to where their school was 2 blocks away.
Wow.
And the merchants gave him food, clothing, shoes, everything he needed, because he took on that job.
Wow.
Where are you going to find a place?
Whew, not here. Not here.
Where they would give him the respect.
Wow.
And give him that unofficial job of making sure these children get to school safely.
Wow.
But the children are more safe there than they are here anyway.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that sense of community. Gosh, it just makes me teary.
Madame, so got a question. So, how has the COVID pandemic affected you this past year?
Oh Lord, this has been so hard. This has been so hard. I usually come back to the United States in December, January, February. Sometimes I'll stay as late as March. And when it's cold in Paris, I'm like, I'm
going back home.
But I'm also doing speaking arrangements. I speak all over the world. I speak at different, about Black Paris tours and about the history. So I've done a lot of stuff, a lot of traveling. I was in Germany, Vietnam. I just take that time to go and speak and teach. Mm-hmm. I speak at museums. I speak at art galleries, bookstores, and so that's what I've been doing. And my daughter and I were here in March of 2020. I was preparing to go home. I was supposed to have gone home. Listen to me. I was supposed to have gone back to Paris in March 10th. And I had a brother friend. His name is Chan Barry. He is the director. He's a movie maker, filmmaker. And he's done 2 movies, Dark Girls 1 and Dark Girls 2.
Okay.
And Chan had come with a group to Paris. And they had taken my tour and he had done some stuff, some filming. And so Chan called me and he says, "What you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm getting ready to go back to Paris." He says, "Well, can you stay until the 13th of March because I'm going to be in Oakland where we're going to do the premiere of Dark Girls 2. Mm-hmm. And I was like, he says, "I got a surprise for you." So I stayed. My daughter and I stayed.
Nice.
Well, then you know what happened.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was shut down. Gosh. And they couldn't even show the movie. That had to be canceled. Everything was canceled. But I was here. And so I've taken this opportunity to have work done on my house. My house needed a new foundation. And to, just pay attention to me, my daughter. Can't go out and see my friends, even though there's more freedom here than there would have been in France, because the French, they don't play. When they say, "You better stay home,"
you at home.
Stay yourself.
Madame, we're in the South, so in some places down here, COVID never happened to some people. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. When you live in a society where the government pays for your medical care, they don't play.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So there were a lot of masks. I don't know, among my circle of friends, I don't know anyone who was a denier. Mm-hmm. Yeah. People are dying. You can die from this stuff.
They are.
Yeah.
So you better stay at home. Although they do have, they've opened up and then they've shut down. Just last week, they shut down again for another 4 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. Because the French got happy and went out and got happy feet, and the incidence of COVID went up. So I guess I'm lucky because I can move around a bit more freely here, although I don't that much. So I wrote a chapter in a book. That's one thing I was really proud of.
Nice.
We're now taking Black Paris tours virtual. So we've done some great tours.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
That's awesome. An opportunity to do a tour for Vanderbilt, Meharry Med School.
Wow.
Wow.
A couple of travel agencies. We did a virtual tour just the other day for a Lynx group.
Nice.
In New York. So we're having fun. And the wonderful thing is that my 2 guides who are in Paris, they're my eyes, ears on the ground there. And once we get this all organized, we have plans. I have great plans for what we can do. To just give you a tour of Paris and make you feel like you're on a plane. Now we landed. Now you got to say bonjour, madame, bonjour, monsieur. Am I saying it too much? I want to emphasize. Yeah, you better say it.
Say it.
You know what? I just realized it's cohort 1986. That's the year my daughter was born.
That's the year we were born.
No wonder I like you all so much.
And we love you too. We love you too. And so, Mrs. Stevenson, so tell everyone, where can they find you? Where can they find more information about Black Paris tours? And how can they potentially sign up to do one of your virtual tours?
Well, we're gearing up. As I said, we're gearing up to make the virtual tour even better, more virtual.
Nice.
So you can go on our Black Paris Tour, no S at the end, .com, www.blackparistour, our website. We also have a fabulous Facebook page that I just happen to curate.
I agree.
I'm on my daughter teases me. She's like, Mom, you need to get paid. I said, I do, with the people who look at it and learn. She does our Instagram page.
Nice.
So, and then I have a personal Ricki Stevenson page, but let me warn you, it's real political. You might not want to go there. So I'll just recommend my Black Paris Tour Facebook,
nice.
Black Paris Tour Instagram, and our Black Paris Tour website, and talk to people. We are so blessed.
Yes.
We have had so many wonderful guests who talk about. My daughter was out somewhere yesterday, and she says, Mom, I met a woman who, I don't know how it got started. Maybe someone said something about Paris. And this lady said, I was in Paris in 1999, and I took this tour. She's telling my daughter, not knowing.
Wow.
And do you know the lady that does the tour? And my daughter's like,
Very well. I know her very well.
I know her really well. She used to spank me. And so I love the fact that we have people, and then we have folks who've taken our tour that I never would have met any other way.
Wow.
Right.
Colin Kaepernick and Eric, I'm going to say his name, Reed.
Eric Reed. Yep. He's played for the Panthers.
Yep.
In Charlotte.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They took our tour a couple of years ago. Questlove,
Yeah.
Tariq,
Yeah.
from the Roots band, they took the tour. Brian McKnight, singer extraordinaire,
Gosh.
taking the tour. Iyanla Van Zant took the tour
Wow.
last year. Well, before last year. When I say last year, it's 2019. I wasn't even there. Some of the people from Blackish took the tour.
Oh, that's awesome.
Steve Harvey. Well, he didn't really take the tour,
Mm-hmm.
but he made me give him the tour.
Wow.
Kind of virtually.
Wow.
Excuse me. So it was really hilarious. But we've been interviewed by Steve Harvey and Roland Martin.
Wow.
And we've had Charlene Hunter Galt, who was my journalist, one of my, other than Ida Barnett Wells, Charlene Hunter Galt, who you all remember.
Yeah.
You remember her. And so Charlene and her husband came and took the tour. I think they're still living in South Africa. I think they are. Who else? The mayor of San Francisco. Well, I say the mayor, but he's the mayor.
The mayor.
Willie Brown.
Oh, Willie Brown.
Wow.
Yes, Willie Brown.
He
Yep.
came to Paris it's been 12 years ago. He came to Paris for his 75th birthday, bringing 120 of his best friends.
Wow.
Wow.
And he took the tour, and he was so hilarious. He was like, well, I have a, we ride, you all know, we get on buses,
Yep.
city buses.
Subway. Yep.
We
All around the city.
and we get on city buses. So Mayor Brown, who I adore, and I had interviewed him years before when I was a journalist in San Francisco, when I was reporter, newscaster in San Francisco. And so he's like, well, I have a limousine at home. The Paris bus driver, he says, he didn't miss a beat. He was like, I'm your chauffeur today.
Oh, man.
He's like, oh, wow, okay. But we have had Mama Miriam Makeba.
Wow. Grace
Bunbury, one of the greatest opera talents to ever live. She took part of the tour, but then she had her family take the tour.
Wow.
We've had the great grandson of Mary McLeod Bethune who took our tour. I have one of my dearest friends now is the great niece of Eugene Jock Bullard, the Black man who was called the Black Swallow of Death.
Wow.
Full circle.
Full circle.
Full circle. So we've just had, I'm sure I'm leaving folks out. Please don't get upset. But it's like you all took the tour.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's just, the other day I did, when we did the virtual tour, let me just get some real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'll keep talking. The other day.
Well, I just want to say, guys, if you are planning a trip, thinking about going a trip.
In 2022, probably
2022.
We hope. Yes.
No.
Cross your fingers. But I mean, we would definitely recommend for you to not only go to Paris, but to take this Black Paris tour. It was probably the best day that we've spent, in Paris. And also, in the tours that we've done, we go everywhere. We're like, okay, let's take a tour so we can learn more about where we are. But, not only was it informative, but it was also interactive. I was looking up, I knew how to read the street after a while.
These malls. Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it was a wonderful opportunity. We had some good food. We started off with some tea and coffee first thing in the morning. So
and the croissant.
Exactly.
Best croissants in the city. Yep.
Good.
Some pastries.
I had to go get some Kleenex because I knew I was going to cry. The other day when we did the virtual tour for the Links chapter, Greater Queens.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much I miss Paris.
Oh, wow.
Not just Paris, but I miss being able to tell the stories every day.
Mm.
And my daughter, who is the vice president of Paris and our tech person, she had put together a nice, cute little video with, I'm going to say, Nat King Cole.
Oh, wow.
And the Mona Lisa. And as my colleague explained, why Mona Lisa became the most famous painting in the world. And I'm like, I miss it. I miss being able, I miss having my job where I get to tell people stuff and they go like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I miss that. So I had to get some Kleenex because I thought I was going to cry again. But I'm so happy that you guys took the full day tour. For those of you who say, well, I don't know if I'm going to be one. It's a full day tour. Mm-hmm. I hate to tell people sometimes it's a full day tour. You're like, well, we don't know if we can do that. But it's
worth it.
Mm-hmm, we've had 4-year-olds. We had a 5-year-old who took the tour and she was like, she hugged my knees. She says, this has been so wonderful. A 10-year-old boy who took the tour, he said, I've never liked history, but I like this.
Yeah.
Where are we going next? A 92-year-old who took the tour, her sons brought her because she'd always wanted to come to Paris.
Wow.
And they brought a wheelchair, kind of like a thing a stroller that she, and she was like, you better put your coats on that. I'm walking every step she walks.
Wow.
Wow.
And she walked with me. And when we got to Little Africa and we're, talking about, well, we're coming to the end of the tour now. She's like, it's over already? My sons are telling me it's going to be hard. I did this, And Or I love the story of the Black family that they owned the mansion that Madam C.J. Walker had built in New York.
Wow.
And they came to take the tour with their 3 children. And so when we got to that restaurant in Little Africa, they were like, I don't know. The cook can't get the kids to eat anything. The butler tries to get them to eat. I was like, oh, y'all got all of that? These kids were, she says, I don't think the kids are going to eat. Well, the kids ordered that. They ate their food. They ate their mama food. They ate their father's food. The parents are like, we have never seen our children eat like this before. They don't normally eat, what they do not know.
Right.
They took their children back to that restaurant, same restaurant you went to 3 days in a row. We just watched these little chocolate children eating. So it geared, they were, I think they were 10, 11, in that age group. But now they've had that experience, and maybe they won't be afraid to go out in the world and try different things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Gosh. Well, this has been awesome. I'm just thinking back to when we were in Paris, and
just like the market in Little Africa, the people everywhere, the historic hotels, and it's just it makes me just kind of miss.
Yeah, you miss it too.
Yeah, I miss it too. I do.
Yeah.
Isn't when you tell people, I have some folks, they'll say, "Well, we don't see any Black people here." I was like, "Well, for those in our viewing audience, we start the tour at a really nice cafe that's really close to the Arc de Triomphe, right off the Champs-Élysées."
Yep. Yeah.
So and I'm telling people, well, all the Black people they're at work today. They're at their job, so they're not going to be just hanging out. But then, I said, oh, we'd have to go to La Défense, which is the Manhattan of Paris, or we'd have to go to Little Africa. But we see Black people all over. But then when we get to Little Africa, they go,
they all there.
Whoa.
I'm back in the South.
We found them. We definitely found
that them. Is hilarious.
Yeah.
So we have a new restaurant for you to go to when y'all come back.
Okay.
Gumbo Yaya.
Gumbo Yaya. Let me write that down.
No gumbo. You can look them up. Gumbo. And but that place is hilarious. It's a little hole in the wall. I hope he will have made it bigger by the time we get back. Yeah. But he has his mother. How does this go? His father's family was from North Carolina. So there's a mix. They're all Black, but they're. And so as a child, he would go south and visit his aunties. And they made chicken, and they showed fried chicken. And if he hasn't gotten that recipe, his chicken is killer.
Okay.
This next time we come to Paris, we're bringing our parents, we're bringing our brothers, our sisters, and our friends. So
we're taking a whole family
everybody get your funds together.
Get the coins in order. We are coming.
We are coming.
And hopefully Candace will submit and we move to Paris.
Come on.
I wanted to live there. She didn't. She was like, I don't know. I was like, I'm like, I can never. I'm like, I could just stay here.
Yeah.
You can.
What the future holds.
You can. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared.
Don't be scared.
Don't let anything. Try everything.
Yeah.
I remember when I was saying, I was telling my news director, well, I'm going to be leaving to go to Paris. And he was like, the French don't like Black people. Imagine. telling me the French don't like black people. I'm like, you forgot. This is when I was working at an NBC station, and I was like, I was in Paris.
Yeah,
that's not the truth. You need to get off of that. But people don't let anybody go see it for yourself.
Yeah.
Go see it for yourself. And it's like my Reverend E would always say, you step out on faith and there will be a crystal staircase. Carry you where you want to go. You want to go.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
Wow.
Madame, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence today. We really enjoyed you.
Yes.
And we would love to have you back whenever you're available to share more stories.
Yes. Whenever.
Are you going to be able to condense all of this so people can...
Look, we're going to play everything because every single word.
Every single word today matters.
It's nothing to condense.
Oh,
This was such a delight. I'm just looking at some of the comments that are coming in, just thanking you for today.
What did they say?
This commenter said, "Thank you, Madame Stevenson."
Yay!
And then a part 2.
And Manners 101.
Yes.
And then there should be a part 2. She has so much information for just one interview.
Oh,
yeah,
that's wonderful.
Yes. So, guys, as always, we are Candace and we are Rodney, and we are cohort 1986. And I just have to say, Miss Ricki Stevenson, this is the reason why we do this, so that we'll have a platform to share these stories, to share these experiences, and to provide knowledge, inspiration, and
everything.
In perspective, guys.
And perspective. Rodney, Candace, I can't thank you enough for allowing me to tell my story.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Okay, so now we got to learn au revoir, madame.
Au revoir, madame.
Monsieur.
Au revoir, monsieur.
Au revoir. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Okay, see y'all later.
Until next time.
Until next time.
Thank you.